Turning dirt and wrenches here, and today I want to show you a rather unique tractor, at least for our part of the country, and a tractor that I really didn't know anything about until I actually owned it, and have been very impressed with it. So Belarus is, if you talk to some people, they think it's just a piece of junk tractor, but I have had nothing but good luck with this. And I've been very impressed with how innovative it is and how simple it is to work on. That's what I love about the old tractors, the M, the H, 706, all those old tractors, the old equipment is really easy to work on and really reliable. And this tractor is newer than they are, but it's still pretty old. I think it's a mid-80s, but I'm not exactly sure on the year. I've never really gone and looked it up, but it's very simple. It's very easy to work on and very robust. And you'll get to see it in its work clothes because I haven't had a chance to clean it up yet. I was doing some broadcast seating and had to run with the rear window open so that I could manipulate my control. And man, I really just filled the cab with dust, so it got pretty nasty in there. But let's take a look at this tractor because it has a lot of features that I really like, that I think are really neat, and they do it in a really simple, durable way. So probably the most obvious thing is that it is a four-wheel drive tractor, but it is a four-wheel drive row crop tractor with high clearance. It's got these drop boxes, and it does have a lot of gearboxes on the front. But it doesn't take too long to check the oil and everything. And there are some oil leaks on this tractor, but man, it's almost 40 years old. And as far as I know, most of these seals are all original, the ones that I take out and replace. So I don't care what brand of tractor you have after that long. And I know this tractor did a lot of sitting before I got it. There's evidence of it not being used for a long time. So, just sitting, those seals are going to dry out, and that's to be expected. But up here, so you got your little transfer case right here on the side of the transmission. And what's neat about this four-wheel drive is it has a automatic setting as well, and it's all done mechanically. There's a control inside the cab. You have two-wheel drive, which is where it's at now, or this little shifter here and that control rod. You can shift it into auto, which there is an overrunning clutch inside there. And so auto only works when you're driving forward. If you drive in reverse, your four-wheel drive, your front-wheel drive is not working because it's an overrunning clutch like you put on a PTO. And but what it does is it is set to spin just a hair faster. Is that right? No, it's just a hair slower. So that basically if you get, I think it's like 12% slip or something in the manual, it said on this rear wheel, then that overrunning clutch engages and the front end starts pulling. But you're not pulling unless you really need it. Then if you shift it to the next notch, you are in straight four-wheel drive. You got four-wheel drive in forward and reverse, and it is a solid connection. So you don't really want to use that unless you're just stuck, because you'll start pulling on the tires real hard, especially if you're on a hard surface. That's for when you're really stuck. So just got the external drive shaft, comes up here. It's got a nice heavy duty intermittent bearing here that's runs in oil. That's also a safety slip clutch, just like on a PTO, that is adjustable. So if for some reason you would bind up the four-wheel drive, if you're locked in, it'll just slip here a little bit. Comes up here to your differential on your front end, and then you got a 90-degree gearbox here. It drops down and it's got a little spur gear and then a ring gear right in here. Now this front end is really neat as well because it is an adjustable front end. There's two shafts in here that are splined that will slide, and you would loosen these bolts take this cover off, and there's a worm gear, and you can see little notches here, so that's real easy to adjust. Once this is loose, the worm gear just pushes this right over. Worm gear's got a lot of torque, and it's got a flat edge here to make sure the alignment stays correct. And the other neat thing about this tractor is it has a suspension system on it. You can see there's a gap right here, and there is a huge spring in here, and you can see it when you're going down the road if you don't have a heavy 3-point load on it. And this sits here and it goes up and down, whatever that is, 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch, and takes some of the shock. I'm sure it helps the bearings and everything survive, and also makes the tractor ride a little better too. But I thought that was really interesting because I've never seen a suspension system built in like that, or an adjustable wide front 4-wheel drive tractor, other than, you know, flipping rims around and stuff. So this is infinitely adjustable. Okay, so this side's pretty much the same, just the reverse. It's got a little bit of an oil leak on this side. This is your steering. It's fully hydraulic steering. So you got a big old cylinder there to turn it back and forth. This is another interesting thing, and a thing that I appreciate on equipment that's made to last. It has adjustable ball joints, which I've never seen before. But you cut this wire, and I have adjusted them already once. And this piece is a separate cap that threads into this piece, and that's the little cut part that turns down on top of the ball right here. So you just tighten it up a little bit, you know, maybe like a 1/4 turn, or not even that, and then put more wire on it to hold it where it's supposed to be, and then your ball joint's tight. And this is just a massive ball joint anyway. But I really appreciate an engineer that designs a machine that's made to last, made to be serviced. That's what I like to see, and I feel a lot of newer equipment is not designed that way. You know, a lot of throwaway stuff. But as you can see, those are a little bit harder to get to, but they're adjustable as well. Let's see. On the engine, actually, we'll just go ahead and open the hood. This has a hood. It's got a little hatch here that is just spring loaded, and that lets you get into your hydraulic reservoir, which is back there. Then there's also another panel if you want to check the radiator, but it's pretty easy to open this hood. You just got these 2 latches, and I'm gonna have to set this down a little bit more of this pre-cleaner. This pre-cleaner is pretty neat too. Probably since I just haven't driven a tractor that it's sitting right in front of my face all day, but I'm sure others do this as well. I just haven't noticed. But there's these little slits on each side, and I suppose it spins that air. I've never taken that apart, but I'm sure it spins it like a little vortex, and as you're driving along, you'll just see clouds of dust shooting out those 2 little slits. And I suppose it spins it, and then it goes straight down towards the other air cleaner. But I always thought that was interesting, that it cleans that much dirt out. That's probably what the one on the M does. It just catches it in that jar. So this just spins the dirt right out, and you don't have to worry about emptying a jar. But I thought that was kind of neat. But once you got the latches, got caught over there. Get this hood up. So it does have air conditioning. That works really well. It's given me a little bit of trouble this spring, but I mean, that's to be expected. I've just got a leak somewhere that I got to find. I mean, I haven't really done anything to it other than refill it when I bought it, you know, 3-4 years ago. Got your, that's aftermarket, but that's essential for a cold climate. Got the first stage fuel filter, oil fill, dipstick. The oil filter is a centrifugal oil filter. And I know there was some Case IH tractors, like some of those crab steer ones, that had this as well. But basically there's no element. There is a centrifuge inside there that uses the oil flow to spin. Spins really fast, flings the oil against the outside, just like a cream separator. And your debris and any soot or carbon goes to the outside, and the clean oil goes down the center. So you just open this up, and there's going to be, you know, a layer. There's probably like a 1/4 inch layer when I first got it. And you just clean all that out, and then reassemble all the parts, and you're good to go. There's no filter. I believe there is one element filter on this tractor, and there's only 2 different kinds of oil that's used on the entire tractor, because, you know, a lot of these are in Asia, you know, Scandinavia, Ukraine. You know, back in the day it was hard to get parts, so you had to, you know, it was made with the least amount of throwaway pieces as possible. A lot of pieces that are just serviceable and cleanable. Even this pre-filter is just a really fine mesh screen that's going to take your chunks out. This air filter is an oil bath air filter, which I really like. You know, I think the oil bath air filters do a better job cleaning the air. I don't have any proof of that, but it just seems like, you know, catching it in the oil and all the dirt you clean out of it, that it's doing a good job. So that is a big oil bath air cleaner to get enough flow for this motor. What else interesting do we have on this side? These are the lines. It does have a big oil cooler in front of the radiator. I've seen this type of radiator on like semis, but never on a tractor. But it's the tanks are bolted to the core, so there's a gasket. So I could even take that apart. And I suppose, you know, back in the day, if your core was leaking, you should buy a core and then you can bolt it back together. You know, you don't have to have it brazed or anything, which is kind of neat. Let's see, those are your oil cooler lines. It has a hydraulic differential lock, and it also has the power steering that's separate from the hydraulics. And that's what this little pump here is for. It's driven off the timing cover. That there's a reservoir up here on that gearbox here, because it does have a shaft from the steering wheel, but it goes up here, and then that's where it turns into the hydraulic steering. And you've got your hydraulic pressure for your steering up there. So, oh, this is kind of interesting. This is the shifter for your hydraulics. You can shift the hydraulic pump out on this just by pulling back on this and shifting it down. Now the hydraulic pump is in neutral and it will not spin. The manual says if you're in extreme cold, you know, -degree weather, you can do that, get the tractor started and warmed up, then shut it off, and then reshift it in, and then start it, and you get your hydraulic pump going so that you have less drag on the motor trying to get it started in this real cold weather, which, you know, that's what this was designed to do in really cold weather. But I thought that's kind of interesting. I've never seen that on any other tractor before. And I mean, if you're doing something that doesn't require hydraulics, say you're pulling wagons around, I mean, it takes 2 seconds to hop out here and throw your hydraulic pump out, and then you're not wearing that pump. Not that that's a big deal, but you know, there's advantages to having that little extra in there. Your hydraulic reservoirs come back here, and that's a big hunk of cast iron. That's probably the heaviest. I guess the M's hydraulic reservoir is cast iron too, but you don't really see that too much. Let's see. It's got big old disc brakes. They're mechanical disc brakes. There's no hydraulics to them. It's just like a Super M would have, except better. They stop pretty good. What else we got? Cabs on big old shock mounts. I think that's pretty much it for this side. Let's go around to the other side. That's interesting, but I'm going to show you that in a minute. Alternator. This is the only paper element or, you know, disposable filter on this tractor. is the second stage fuel filter, and it's a real fine paper filter. All the rest of them are just screens that can be cleaned. So even the hydraulic, it's kind of hard to see. Behind this plate is the hydraulic filter screen. Even the injectors, I rebuilt the nozzles and rebalanced the injectors. They're all adjustable, just like a Perkins injector with you know, a nut and a screw for their pot pressure, so you don't have to have washers and shims and stuff like on a Cummins injector. But that was interesting. That was during COVID. I thought it was funny that there's a guy I was working for at the time, all brand new tractors, Case IH tractors, and you know, it wasn't their fault, but he couldn't get parts, you know, for these tractors, even tractors that were a couple years old. I think it was filters, or I don't remember exactly, but they couldn't get any parts. And I had nozzles shipped from Ukraine for these injectors, and I got them within 5 days while he was waiting 3 weeks to get whatever parts he needed for those cases. So as far as parts availability, because that's what I was concerned about when I first looked at this at the auction. And there's a place in Arkansas that I've gotten a lot of parts from, and they do real well. They'll get it to you in a couple days, which is pretty fast. And I mean, for pretty much all the equipment I have, parts are going to be ordered because they're all obsolete, and that's just the way it is. But 2 days is pretty fast, and the stuff that I've actually bought from overseas is usually about a week, which has really surprised me. I have not tried to order things. A lot of the parts come from Ukraine, and I haven't bought anything there since that whole thing started, so I'm not sure. I see that they're still on their website say the parts are available, ready to ship. I just haven't needed anything yet to test that and see what the weight is on that. This is a little tank that you fill with diesel, and that is for your cold starting assist. I'll climb up here. This right here is a heater element, and then it's got this little diesel line that goes to it. It's also a solenoid valve, so when you engage that in the cab, solenoid opens and it starts heating up, and it starts dripping diesel on it. You get a little flame going inside your intake to heat it up for cold weather operation, and that does work. Usually I prefer to plug it in just so the oil is nice and warm, but you can start this with no assist down to probably about 5 degrees. We really haven't had colder weather that I've needed to start it in, so I'm not sure. It might even go lower than that, but I prefer to plug it in just so it doesn't have to crank so hard, but it will get it started. What else we got? Oh, this is interesting. This is a little butterfly valve that is inside the intake, and it's connected to like a choke cable inside the cab. And it said if the diesel starts to run away, which I've never heard of a 4-stroke diesel doing that. I suppose they could. But if for some reason the diesel starts to run away, which is where it's accelerating, it's usually got a fuel leak somewhere where it shouldn't, and it's just accelerating out of control. You can pull that and it will kill it because you choke off the air. So it's kind of a little emergency setup that they thought needed to be designed into it. Let's see, big old 24 volt alternator. This is 24 volt, but it has a switch over in the battery box so that all the accessories are 12, but it starts with 24. Big old inline injection pump, as simple as can be. I did have trouble with that. The original one, when I bought it, the tractor smoked a lot, and I just thought, you know, it's an Eastern European tractor, it probably just smokes. Well, a plunger locked up on me when I was working it in the spring, and I got this pump from that company in Arkansas, and they did a real nice job getting it to me quick, got it all put back together. And man, I started up because I'd already rebuilt the injectors and rebalanced them. And you guys, I'm sure, see in some of those videos of this tractor working, there's a little puff of smoke when it starts, and you get a little bit of black smoke when you put it under load, like you're in road gear taking off or something. But you're running around the field, there's no smoke. I mean, it's just like running a gas tractor. I was highly impressed with how clean this runs, especially for almost, I'm close to 2,000 hours on it. And I have no idea how it was taken care of before me. The injectors, they had some pretty bad spray patterns, which is probably just from sitting with fuel in them, you know, probably getting some pits in it with that biodiesel. But they had much better spray patterns now. And yeah, it even running out of oil once while I was using it. That was another little story to go with this. I don't know if you can't really see it, but there's a patch right here. This is an aluminum oil pan, and I was bush hogging, and I must have hit something, and I didn't know it, and it flung it all the way up underneath the tractor. It must have hit the ground or something, and it punched a hole in my oil pan. And the only warning I got, it does have a warning light and an oil gauge, but I didn't notice the oil gauge as soon as I noticed that warning light that came on. And so I shut it down immediately, and I thought, oh great, I ran this out of oil. This is now toast. And got it all fixed and put back together, and it runs just fine. So I guess they've got some real robust engineering in this. Still starts fine in the cold even after all that. So it's got good compression. But enough of those stories. There's a lot of features on this. This video is going to be kind of long, but I think it's worth looking at because this tractor, it does have a lot of neat features on it. This is for your differential lock. So there's a line right here and right here, and it goes all the way up to that pump, and there's a valve system up there, and that goes back, and you'll see this brake is a lot wider, and there's the line coming in there. There's a big diaphragm in there, and that's how the differential lock works, is it just pressurizes that, pushes against the spring, and locks the differential up. Well, how they do that and why the valve is up here by your steering gearbox is because it also has automatic differential lock. It has two settings. So you see that those tie rods are connected to something there that looks like a normal pitman arm that would be like on an International or something. Well, that is connected through a normal spindle that comes up into this gearbox, just like it would be if it was normal steering, but it is a fully hydraulic steering. There's no hard linkage between your steering wheel and the tires. But what that does is it controls a valve up here, and if you turn your wheels, I want to say it was like 15 degrees one way or another, it unlocks the differential. It opens that system up if you have it set in automatic. And then if you have it set in manual, obviously it just keeps the differential lock constantly. So at the end of the field, you know, you turn your wheel, it automatically unlocks. You straighten your wheel out, it automatically locks. There's no computers, no sensors, all done mechanically. Excuse me, mechanically. And that is done via these cables. That one goes to the radiator shutter, this cable right here. So there you go, you can see it turning the valve. Just a simple pulley cable system, and then there's a lever in there that hooks to it. And then these other two cables, the one's a little loose, there is a you can't really see it, but there's a radiator shutter that, yeah, you're not gonna be able to see it, but it's in between the radiator and oil cooler. And as you can see, the cable turns and goes down. It's spring loaded, so when you crank it up in the cab, it just raises that shutter right up. Lower it, it pulls itself right back down. And this tractor runs really cool anyway. Even working it hard in the summer, you can barely get it into the green on the temperature gauge. So this does help a lot, especially in the winter, because it takes a long time to get warmed up. And if you want any heat, that way you can get a little bit of heat, because this, you know, the cab does have a nice heater in it. That was the important thing in Scandinavia, I'm sure, or Siberia. But I think that is most of it. I'd like to clean up this. These are relays for the air conditioner. The air conditioner was an aftermarket thing that was installed by the dealer when it came over here. That's why that bracket's a little different. And I would like to clean that up sometime, make it look a little nicer. But what else? There's a lot of features on here. I'm sure I'm forgetting something. We can move around to the back. The rear wheels adjust just like the front wheels. They've got a big old worm gear in here, and your little gear teeth. So you just loosen it up, and then it has a nut head on it that you turn, and you can slide the wheel in and out real easy. The PTO, that is very interesting. This has a 2-speed PTO that you shift. It's inside the transmission. You can either have 1,000 or you can have a 540. And then there is also another shifter beyond that, and it is ground synchronized, which is something you don't have over here, but in Europe, I guess, is more common. They'll have trailers that are driven. They'll have driven axles on them when they're in real muddy conditions, and they hook to the PTO, and there's a standard ratio to ground speed to RPM on the PTO. And when you have the PTO shifted into the ground synchronized, it's synchronized to your transmission and your tractor. And then if you had that type of trailer hooked up to your PTO, now all you have to do is engage your PTO, and you've got, whatever, an 8x8 if you're trying to get out of mud. So that's kind of interesting. Nothing I would ever use. They might use that on planters too. I could see that, being ground synchronized through your wheels. That'd be pretty accurate. But I'm pretty sure that there are trailers that work like that. Not too much. I mean, it's a 3-point with down pressure. The 3-point has, I guess the 3-point does have a lot of settings. You can have a normal position control. You can switch it to be draft control. You can put the position control in neutral and use one of the hydraulic levers for the remotes. It also runs the 3-point, and that will let you have down pressure or float, and it just straight up and down. So like when you're doing this, or say you're cultivating where you don't need position control, you don't wear out all that linkage because there's a physical shifter that unhooks it, so you're not moving that all the time. And then you just use a hydraulic lever, just raise it all the way up, lower it all the way down. And if you had to change a spare tire or change a tire, I suppose you could put a block under that and it would lift the tractor right up, because it's pretty strong hydraulics on this thing. But it does have 2 positions for your lift arms. This little pin right here, you can take it out, put it in this hole, and then it's a solid position. Or you put it in this sliding slot, like when I use a rotavator or even the cultivator, and it lets the arms have a little bit of up and down movement opposite of each other. They're not fixed, so that if you do have a little bit of uneven field, it can float that way. And then just big old chains to tighten it up with. I really like chains or some kind of sway bar type setup like the M has, compared to I think they call them wear blocks or whatever that some tractors use. Because the chains, like on a cultivator, you can tighten that up and get it perfectly tight. On the wear blocks, it's hard to get it without any movement. And then throughout the day, sometimes I'll come back here and just tweak it a tiny bit and get a little tighter. I think that's a much better way to do it, in my opinion. It does have 2 remotes, and those remotes are separate from the 3-point. They're completely on their own circuit, with pressure up and down and float. Big old filler. That's like a 3-inch cap to fill that with, I guess, if you're filling out of barrels or something. Okay, on this side, this is kind of interesting. There's a license plate light and mounts for a license plate, because in some countries you got to register your tractors. This lever here is a 3-point lockup. So back in here, there is a, that's kind of hard to see. I'll move it down. I don't know if you can see that. It's not really moving a whole lot. You can kind of see it. But this piece, if the 3-point was all the way up, it'll drop clear down over that ledge. And then you can let the 3-point down and you don't have any hydraulic pressure holding it up. Like if you, for some reason, you want to park with the 3-point up. Or what I like is if you're doing drawbar work, you can put that up and you don't have to worry if for some reason the 3-point would seep down, that it would catch on your hydraulic hoses or something like that. I've never had that problem, but it's kind of a handy thing. When you're going down the road, you can carry the implement that way instead of on the hydraulics, which I'm sure is a lot easier on it. That's just pretty standard crank to balance your 3-point out. Has a really heavy duty drawbar, I'll say that. One kind of interesting thing, I don't know if you're technically supposed to use it this way, about that 2-speed PTO, is I have an adapter to go to the different splines, but I can run a 540 implement at 1,000 RPMs if I want to, because I have the 540 splines. It's the same PTO that shifts in and out. So what that lets me do, if you were like using a sickle mower or something, and I mean this tractor has 85 horsepower, so that is way more power than you need to run a sickle mower. I can shift it into 1,000, run at half the RPMs, and get the same 540 output and use half the fuel because it's got plenty of power to run it. And I've got the gears too, which I'll show you in a minute. But that pretty much does it on the back. I mean, it's got brake lights, turn lights, tail lights, everything that you would have on a car, because in a lot of countries, they need to have all that to be legal. This is some kind of power port that I'm not really familiar with. That might be like an old trailer type plug. I'm not sure. I don't ever use that. But yeah, it's got mirrors. I love that. And some big old lights. So we'll go inside and I'll show you the controls. Alrighty, let's climb up in the cab and show you the controls. So we got temperature, water temperature. We got an amp meter. That's just a blank, and that is oil pressure. That is your tach and hour meter. I think the blank one would have been air pressure, because you could order these tractors with a built-in air compressor and tank in case you wanted to pull a trailer that had air brakes. I guess that's common over in Europe. It'd also be really handy if you had a flat tire or wanted to blow equipment off, but mine didn't come with that. So just got like a horn button and turn signal, dim and bright, windshield washer fluid, and those are your warning lights up under there. Man, they got pretty dusty. This is your differential lock control. So here, let's get this situated. There we go. If you pull it out, it pulls on those cables. Turn it sideways. That's in automatic. It'll engage when your wheels are straight. That's off. And if you pull it all the way back, see, it goes just a little bit farther. That is differential locked, no matter what. But I've never really had to use that, because I mean, if your wheels are straight, then it's locked. But that's off. This is your radiator shutter control. Basically, it's just a little pulley that winds that cable up and pulls the shutter up in front of the radiator. Let's see. Down there is the emergency kill, like that little butterfly valve in the intake. That's just a choke valve that you pull back, and that is just a extra switch. That's your lights. Over here, I thought it was interesting. You can't really see inside this little thing. It's pretty dusty. There's a element, and it is hooked to the same circuit. It's actually hooked in line with the heating element for the intake. And so you turn the key to the heat position, and you can watch that, and it will get hot. And if it's not getting hot, then you know that that heater element is not getting hot either in the intake and not working for some reason. So that's a nice way to double check that the heater's working. That's just your ignition key. You got your 3 remote levers. So the 2 on the one on the left and the one in the middle run the remotes that are in the rear. The one on the right runs the 3-point if you have it in the neutral position on your draft control / position control lever. That is over here. That's parking brake. You got the throttle. This is your throttle. That's your PTO. That's your 3-point. So it's kind of complicated what I was saying to run it, but once you figure it out, it's not really that complicated. So this can go forward, and you've got your normal either draft or position control, depending on where you have it switched. And you switch that underneath the seat. There's a lever you flip one way or another if you want it in draft or position control. But if you go ahead, and up here is a neutral. You can feel it kind of goes over center, and it's in neutral now. Then you can run it with this lever, just up and down or float, whatever you want. And then it actually can go farther back as well, and that is just a manual lift. Like if you were using it in position control or float, and you wanted to manually lift it, because a position control will not raise it 100% to its max height. It probably goes to about 75% its max height. And if you want to go to the last 100% to where you can use the 3-point lockup, you either got to raise it here or put it neutral and raise it there, whichever way you want. That's the master ground disconnect. On these tractors, you disconnect that every time you're done, and you just engage it when you're ready to start. Not really a whole lot. I mean, it's a pretty spacious cab compared to most tractors from that time. It's got more space than like a 4430 or something would. Big flat shelf back here. It's been pretty handy. That is actually the battery box. You have to open the back window, and there's 2 latches, and that opens up. But you got your batteries in there. Little manual windshield wiper on the back. It is a powered windshield wiper on the front, 2-speed. And what I like is these mirrors. You got the big old truck mirror there, another mirror there, another truck mirror there. You can really see a lot when you're driving, which is nice. Not having to look back all the time. It has an escape hatch out the roof, which is kind of interesting. Just hit that latch, and those gas cylinders take care of it. Makes blowing out the air conditioner or heater core really easy. It does go higher than that. I'm just not going to raise it up. And I put it in that headliner. The headliner was missing, and that one didn't stay up very well. I need to re-glue that. All the gas cylinders work just fine on this rear window. You know, they hold it up just fine. They hold up the escape hatch on the top just fine. I bragged on it, now it doesn't like me. Yeah, come on now. There we go. Only thing, this main door, the primary door that you get in and out of, it doesn't seal 100%. I can show you that down at the bottom. And that is because, it's probably kind of hard for you to see, but a little crease right there. Somebody has caught it at some point. They had it open long before me, and they caught the bottom of it and didn't break the glass, but they torqued the door just enough that now it doesn't seal at the bottom. The other one is sealed just fine. So I heard I did a lot of reading online when I went to bid on this, and some people, I noticed the people that actually own them on the forums like them, and then people that didn't were ones that just absolutely hated them. And I don't know, everyone's got their own opinion, but I really like it, and I don't have any complaints. Got oil leaks and things, which is normal for anything this old. Every time I fixed it, you know, I've taken out an old dried up gasket or seal, and after it's been fixed, it doesn't leak. That injection pump, which I think was going out anyway, from probably just from sitting for so long, and this new one works flawlessly. So I don't have any complaints there. Fuel. This is kind of interesting. I wondered why they put the fuel gauge up here for a long time, and then I realized that while I'm filling it back here, I can look up and see the fuel gauge and keep track of how full it's getting. You know, if for some reason, you know, you only wanted to put so much in or whatever, which is, I don't know. I don't know if they intended to do that, but that kind of makes sense why it's up here. It's got extra lights on the front, on top of the cab. That's what that's for. That's your air conditioner control. Speaking of fuel, that's another thing that I absolutely love about this tractor. For most loads, if you're not using the full 85 horse, you're only burning about a gallon of fuel an hour, which is just amazing. Even if I'm cultivating, I can cultivate 50 acres twice, and that includes driving to the field, which is 13 miles away and back, on one tank of fuel. And I'm not exactly sure how much this holds, but I'm guessing it's around 20, maybe 20, 30 gallons, somewhere in there. It's got 2 tanks underneath the cab. It doesn't hold very much, and I mean, I'm just blown away. If you're pulling it really hard, it's probably using about 2 gallons an hour, but that's 85 horse. The M uses 2.5 gallons of fuel an hour for 40 horse. And I know that's gas and diesel makes a big difference, but you know, that, especially when diesel is so expensive, that really was nice. Very, very economical tractor. Oh, transmission. I never told you guys about the transmission. Let me hop back in here, because that's something that's kind of unique to this tractor. Oh, you do have a throttle gas pedal as well as your hand throttle, which makes it driving it down the road a little nicer. So how this works, it's a little different. This can only go forward and backwards. You got one gear or another gear, but this rotates to select, you know, normally on an 8 shifter, you know, you would come over and then go that way. Here you rotate it. And it's got a diagram down there that shows you how it all works. So you have a forward and then a reverse, and then another forward, 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 forward. And then you can turn it all the way over here, and you either have a high or low, and it will stay in whichever gear. See how that kind of flops? It's in high right now. If I were to pull it back to low, and see, it doesn't try to, I can take it out of low and go back to neutral without putting that low into neutral, if that makes any sense. So that's low, and then I go into my next gear and I'm in the low range. And then if I want to get high, turn over here, go to high, come back. See, I don't start to change the gear until I would go all the way to the other position. You're either in high or you're in low. And then you just choose whichever range you want, which is nice because the shifter stays right over here, and you're not going over here and whatnot. You know, it's just right in line, and it's really quick once you get the hang of it. I've not had any trouble with that. It's very definite. You can hear it, you know, the detent's clicking in as it goes to each range. Make sure that's neutral. It has a neutral safety switch, but just to double check. So that's kind of a neat design that I've never seen anywhere else. And then there's a pedal down here that is another high and low. Or actually it's a straight through, a 1-to-1 up here, and then it's a reducer if you go back. And all of these gears, you have to use the clutch. They're non-synchronized gears, just big old heavy gears like what a semi would have. So you just take your time and get your RPMs right, and it's just fine. But so that's sort of like a TA, I guess. You know, it drops, I forget the exact ratio, but it kind of gives you in between gears, between your high and low and everything. So this is basically a 9-speed with this high and low that you can do in each gear. You can split each gear. And so that, gives you 18 speeds and 4 reverse speeds. And it goes all the way from, I think, less than a mile an hour at full throttle all the way up to slightly over 20. And that gives you a lot of range to choose from when you're doing different things. It makes it really handy. So like I was saying before, with the PTO, if I wanted to shift the PTO into 1,000 to run a 540, like a hay mower or something, and I can just run it at half RPMs and go up in my gears because I've got so many gears to choose from. And then you save even more fuel that way. I let it down with the when I was messing with the 3-point lever. But overall, I'm very impressed with this tractor. I know it's a little different, but I think the Soviets did a good job designing this to survive in a bunch of different climates. And what I like the most is it's designed with ease of maintenance and longevity in mind. They made it really simple. Everything's mechanical. That can be, have an automatic 4-wheel drive and automatic differential lock. That's all done mechanically. That's pretty interesting. And I haven't been around a huge amount of tractors, but I've never really seen another one that does that. I remember driving a John Deere, and you could lock the differential, but when you hit the brakes, you had to hit the brakes and it would disengage. Just tap the brakes, and then you'd turn, and then when you started down the row again, you'd hit it again to engage it. And this does all that for you, and it does it all mechanically without any trouble. Yeah, it's a unique tractor, but a really well built tractor. I know this video is going to be pretty long, but I just thought this tractor deserved to get some attention too. It could be considered a collectible now, I suppose, or not quite an antique, but getting up there close to 40 years old and still going strong. It gets the job done, keeps right on going. So I guess I will let you go, and thanks for watching.